All right.
Well, what did you guys like about the documentary or dislike?
It was kind of
Is
eye-opening.
Jeff Bezos is a genius. I don't know if I'm comfortable with how much money he makes though. I thought
I don't even,
him
oh,
basically like redoing the supply chain in his own business's name, like the entire supply chain from the bottom up, like from the warehouses to the delivery drivers to the internet service. Like he essentially like established his own distribution system, I guess, throughout the US. And like that was like a big part of like why their company was able to become so successful so quickly.
well, huge, yeah, yeah, and a large amount of data collection.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna say that's like surveillance state kind of stuff. That's scary.
yeah, yeah. Um, oh shit. I would, I'd be hard pressed to call him a genius. I think
Mhm.
he's a really smart guy,
Mhm.
but genius requires a little bit more than a digital change of something that's been happening for hundreds of thousands of years. He was just
Yeah,
the
but he
first
kind
person
of
to do it.
orchestrated himself to be at the top of that, which is pretty smart.
Yeah, it's smart. If power is something you could, uh, I don't know, if power is the thing that defines genius, then there's some really dumb people who are very power, or there are really dumb people who could be considered geniuses.
That's fair.
Why is this not working?
I think he was able to, he was very into the like thinking of the future.
Mhm.
And in all reality, had the future, like, had one thing changed, he would have never, like, he wouldn't be making the money he's making.
Yeah, if like somebody else just had the right idea at the right time period, it could have like
Well, and
completely.
it's that, or like, if, one thing being like hit the Ring doorbells and all of that, if like
Hmm.
something would have like affected that, Ring wouldn't be super popular.
Hmm.
Like, um,
Well,
I think he got lucky with how the world worked out and the fact that he was able to think about what it was going to happen and he saw that he was able to just he he somehow correctly was able to predict how the future was going to go and he became very successful off of it and I think part of that was just luck. Like
yeah,
Created.
and I mean part of that has to do with the economy too.
yeah. But one of the, like, I mean, I think an important quote to keep in mind. This is kind of justifying him as a genius, but um, there was a quote earlier. It was like 1% of, what was it? I don't know, the Einstein quote 99% perspiration, 1% ideation or something. I can't remember. Um, and the dude's execution of his ideas are absolutely phenomenal. Um, but he hasn't, he's gotten so much power through uncompetitive business practices
Hmm.
in which stifles other people's ability to do anything.
Hmm.
If a company were to develop or not develop, what was the? I mean, he just purchased Ring. He's like, Ring's a really good idea. I'm going to buy that. Bought Ring.
Hmm.
If he wanted to increase the production of his warehouse, he decided to buy warehouse robots. Like
Hmm.
you just purchase that company. You know, when you have huge amounts of funding to do whatever you want, there's no risk in capitalism whatsoever. You
Yeah.
can avoid any consequences to your actions at all times. Like if you make
Mhm.
a poor business decision, oh look, I have another $8 billion sitting over here. It doesn't matter. And he's gotten to the point in which he can do that. So like the first sections of Amazon, like he grew very planned and He started small. He owned an entire. He just sold books. He
Mhm.
was the best bookseller. He offered the most competitive prices, and he would ship them to your house in
Mhm.
somewhat reasonable times. And in order to do that, you need huge amounts of logistic systems. You need to have operable websites, and you need to. Honestly, he was on the cutting edge. He probably needed to teach people how to use the internet. That was a very difficult
Go.
task.
Mhm.
um, and trust to take payments on the internet. Like putting card information online is very would have been very scary. I'm not sure
Mhm.
what to do with my information. So we needed to
Mhm.
convince people to do all these things and then develop logistic systems around that and then push them forward, which is really smart. Um, but more modernly, his uncompetitive business practices have prevented, I guess, well, creative destruction from happening. If we have stuff
Yeah,
called
like
destruction, well,
I feel
creative
like there's
destruction outside of Amazon, outside of the big five tech companies or big four, like Amazon, Facebook, or Amazon Meta. You could consider X, but I probably wouldn't. Google, and then Microsoft. So, and are you maybe even ChatGPT now? But I'm not sure
Mhm.
what they do with the data. So,
It is interesting the amount of like quote unquote creative destruction that went on in the process of like building Amazon, because you used to have so many more just like kind of niche like small specified store pop-ups like in each specific town for each specific like niche item or thing. And that is like way harder to like feasibly do now because like everybody essentially like shops through Amazon, and like you've got like Amazon's like retailer program where like you can sign up to like sell your own things on Amazon. And it's like it's just much more like because they already have like the logistics channel set up, and like if you know how to manipulate like kind of like the Amazon homepage or like get your stuff to be recommended, like you can oftentimes do a lot better like just kind of sell your stuff through them rather than like building your own like store or like creating more like legitimate jobs for other people. Because that's the other thing too, is like kind of a bigger deal was like labor exploitation for Amazon, like the high like the crazy ass working conditions in the warehouses where they like if you're not folding a specific number of boxes within the first like 5 minutes, like you're fired basically. Like
mm-hmm.
that kind of thing is gonna be interesting for its impact like on other areas of our economy. So it's gonna be interesting to see if anybody like creatively approach anything that has to do with Amazon, or how Amazon is going to suppress creative destruction of their own like supply chain and like program and stuff like that.
Well, I did. Oh, the simple fact that people begin businesses to sell them to large
Mm.
corporations is
Is
anti competitive. That's just it shouldn't happen, but it does happen.
mhm.
Which I get. Like, I'm not really sure the ramifications of that, but um, I the there was a lot in this documentary. My thoughts are a little scattered.
Same.
So, do you guys, in your own opinions, do you guys think Amazon is kind of a monopoly? Like, what are
At
your
least on
thoughts
like
about that?
commerce, I would say, because like there is no other organization with like the same amount of like transportational power. Like like the UPS and like the USPS like don't have as many like warehouses or trucks or like legitimate logistics like moving capability when it comes to
When
like
it
in comparison to
comes to
Amazon.
like UPS and UPS, they don't have they're not made to sell. They're not selling stuff. They're
Yeah,
literally just there to use to ship things to other
yeah.
people. Whereas like Amazon does it all.
Hmm.
Amazon has the stuff you're buying and they ship it through themselves
Hmm.
and then they deliver it.
They
Yeah.
Whereas
manufacture the things.
UPS like take it to UPS, you buy the shipping label, you ship it off. They are the ones who transport it and they're the ones who deliver it. But it's not like we have the website that has everything that like they're selling.
Mhm.
But they,
Um,
I
Have you seen the percentages of like how much like delivery traffic is going through USPS and like USP versus like versus Amazon? I'm
um,
pretty sure Amazon has more like legitimate or like actual traffic in terms of objects moved than both of
which
them.
and part
Let
of it
me
is like part of
fact
like
check this out.
why I would actually disagree with that is just due to the fact like here in Montana itself, when we just got Amazon centers this year, and to UPS itself still delivers at least of Amazon's packages here in Bozeman because we have the capability to go out to Immigrant, to go out to Gardner, to go out to like Three Forks and uh Ennis and all of that. So granted, like in bigger cities, I'm sure that's absolutely 100% the case.
Mhm,
Especially Seattle, Dallas, Miami, all of these bigger places.
mhm,
Um, but like when you look, obviously, like people wise, Montana's like not, we, Montana doesn't have that many people. We are not, like population wise, we are not one of the biggest states. Um, but part of that, like in the video, was when they were talking about like two-day shipping in every state possible except for Montana didn't get 2-day shipping until this year, until we opened it, finally got our first Amazon center in Bozeman. I know Missoula got one this year, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if Billings has an Amazon center yet. But they've been talking about 2-day shipping for how many years, and Montana's now just getting it. Wyoming, I don't think has an Amazon center yet, so they still don't get like 2-day shipping. So granted, like, and that was one thing that just kind of stuck with me throughout the video was like every state has 2-day, like they were trying to say that like every state has like 2-day shipping and then same day shipping. We still don't have same day shipping, and I mean 2-day shipping is possible like right now,
mhm.
uh, because we just opened an Amazon center, but um. So I don't know if you've all seen, but we're having Prime deals come up again in July.
Mhm.
Uh, and I was actually just talking to my supervisor about it. Amazon here in Bozeman does not have the manpower to deliver all of those packages.
Mhm.
So probably about 70% of all those packages that people order on Prime days in July, almost 75% of them are going to come through UPS itself. And that's kind
Mhm.
of where like they're saying that like every state has 2-day shipping. And granted, it's true now, but for the people, I mean, Montana's big.
Mhm.
It's a really big state. So like the people who live out in the middle of nowhere, um, like I actually just went and helped a driver deliver yesterday, and we went out to all of these places where they're 20-acre lots where one person lives, and they're just super like they're super far out. And we we saw one Amazon truck in Livingston, and I didn't see any the rest of the day. And I was out in Immigrant, and I was out in like Prairie, Montana, and I was out in Gardner. Um, so
but taking anecdotal experiences to derive nationwide things is just incorrect. We need to get wider views on how Amazon's logistic systems and delivery systems work.
Yeah, say
And
like
they use like you might not have seen an Amazon truck in Immigrant, but they've used subcontractors to deliver their packages
oh,
before.
absolutely, and I
Why
totally
wouldn't
agree.
we know? They could use unmarked vehicles to go deliver my packages today. Uh,
mhm.
which honestly, I wouldn't like. The
What do
part
you
about car accidents and all the who's held responsible when your drivers crash. Like
mhm.
car accidents are car accidents. They're gonna have like cars are inherently a dangerous vehicle, so I didn't necessarily like that aspect or that part of the documentary.
But that
Mhm.
also like kind of is important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, who's held responsible? It should be the driver of the vehicle, and it shouldn't need
But
to go up.
also, if your company is pressuring you to deliver all of these packages and you start deciding that like safety isn't number one. I mean, there was an infant killed in an accident because there was a subtra subcontractor of Amazon delivering and wasn't paying attention because they were trying to get all these packages delivered.
Yeah, it's unethical for the driver to do that, and it's unethical for Amazon to expect the driver to do that. So it starts, well, I mean, if you are unable to hit your quota at Amazon, you will probably get fired.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So either you hit your quota or you get fired. If enough people don't hit their quota that day, they can't fire an entire staff. That's what
Mhm.
they're against unionizing, which is the only power that workers have in work. If you wanted to get treated fairly, you have to
Mhm.
work as a conglomerate unit like Amazon has done throughout its history.
Mhm.
So, like, it starts with the individual deciding this is unethical. I can't do this. I can't deliver X amount of packages.
Mhm.
Um, and then their coworkers doing that, and then everybody doing that, and then Amazon has to change. They have to lower their standards of delivery or lower their standards of package gathering.
Mhm.
Um, like I was reading, there's this book called On the Clock. It's about a journalist who worked in an Amazon warehouse facility for like 3 or 4 months.
Mhm.
Um, so, and the scanners track how much you walk around in the warehouse.
Mhm.
Uh, and she was walking. The scanners were like, "Oh, you're walking like 5 or 7 miles." I can't remember. I read it like 5 years ago, so this has been a while. I'm kind of pulling this out of my ass, but the scanners were like, "Oh, you're walking X amount of miles," but in reality, she like wore her own thing and it tracked her own steps, and she was walking like triple the amount her scanners were telling her she was walking.
Oh wow.
And I'm not sure if there's any OSHA regulations that tell you you can't walk X amount of distance in this type of facility. But
Mhm.
it was kind of disturbing. Like she was like, granted, I guess every vending machine has this too, but there are vending machines within the Amazon warehouse facility she was working that just dispense painkillers. If your
Wow.
workers have to eat painkillers every day to do their job, that is absolutely absurd. You
Is that
can't
like
do.
a confirmed thing? Like,
Yeah, I'd have to go. The book is called On the Clock. I'd have to pull out. Oh, hold on. I'll give you the author. Um, I'm not sure which page, but it's the first job. She works at Amazon warehouse facility, a McDonald's, and then a telemarketing, not telemarketing, uh, spam call facility. So, um, but
Well, and part of like the video showed that like Amazon wasn't taking responsibility for what like for the pressure they were putting on their workers.
Yeah, I was gonna say in the book, um, they talk about like supply chain management and like relationship building and how like the interconnectedness is like really important. But Amazon seems to like kind of put forward their like whole like, nothing else matters but efficiency. Like, if you're not delivering this many packages, if you're not packing this many, if this many, isn't, or if this specific thing isn't being done, like you're fired and kind of done with in the eyes of Amazon.
I think that's just like, I don't know, like big factory corporation kind of a system. Because it's kind of like how the American factories works. Like that one documentary we watched about American factories, like I think it was like China was the other people, and that's what they expected in their factories was just like efficiency,
Wouldn't
everything.
that be a Chinese factory though?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is like it reminds me of it. It reminds me of like when you get to like a big factory level, you start just thinking only
Well,
efficiency.
and like part of like that video was showing the difference between American and like the Chinese culture. And the fact that like Amazon's located in the US and they're not like they say they have safety regulations and all of that, but with how much like and it said in the video too, like with how much pressure is on them to do all of this stuff, they were starting to like no longer follow said safety regulations. And it didn't seem like any of the higher ups like really cared about it. They were like, "Oh, well, we'll have to fix that." Um, but also taking like all of the blame off of them. And it like not only were they taking like they were not accepting any of the blame for putting pressure on them, but also like all the uh people who sold stuff on Amazon that were toxic and were like they weren't working correctly. I mean, they had the hoverboard that had caught fire and burned a house down. It just seems like Amazon's not taking a lot of accountability
Mhm.
for what they do and what comes through them.
So if you look, oh, I'm gonna argue. Okay, Amazon's a really, or at least Amazon's marketplace is a very unique. No, it's not really unique. They just put a marketplace on the internet. But they shouldn't have. They should have very little responsibility in what gets placed on that marketplace. Because if I go downtown and I purchase a shirt or a pair of shoes from a store, or I buy, let's say I buy a bicycle from Bangtail, and I'm biking home and the bike breaks and snaps and I hit my head on the concrete and get severe concussion. Like Bangtail, the that individual company should be held responsible. The manufacturer of that bicycle should be held responsible for that accident. It shouldn't be an entire. It shouldn't be the city of Bozeman. And I'd argue Amazon is kind of the city of Bozeman, or the city of all marketplaces everywhere. They put together buyers and sellers, and where the ethical implications come in is they manipulate which buyers and sellers see each other. Not necessarily good, but I guess they are kind of they're anticipating your needs, which cool. But they shouldn't be held responsible. They should mitigate the amount of garbage is sold on their website, but they shouldn't be held responsible for
and that's
user
part of
error.
it. I wouldn't necessarily call it user error if like a hoverboard were to catch fire because you bought it like off of someone off of Amazon. But I think part of it also is like I'm not saying they should take full accountability for it. But having like maybe first of all like having more of a how do I want to say this? In order to sell stuff, you need to like go through different things to sell it. Because how much of this stuff is being sold through Amazon that like no one in Amazon has ever seen or tested or like done anything. And I think that's part like where some of that accountability should come in is if like you're selling it, you could be you're putting people's lives at risk if like there's lead paint or like stuff like that. I think and I'm not like in order to sell stuff, I believe there should be like some way that your stuff needs to be tested before it's sold to millions of people. And that's where I think like some of that accountability should be put. Is it's not quite them taking accountability for all of it because like you said, that's not fair. But also like they grew super fast. They have a ton of sellers and they have a lot of buyers. And there's a way that they could change it where they have someone look at these products that are being sold that aren't quite I don't want to say illegal because they're not, but like you toxic, they're not functional. And there's I mean they're already employing how many people just opening a spot where these people where like sellers can like um ship this stuff too so they can be checked out to make sure it's okay and it's not going to cause anybody harm. I think that's a possibility and it should be part of the accountability that Amazon has.
Yeah, but the marketplace shouldn't be the one to regulate that. If I were to buy a motorcycle helmet, it is up to the consumer and the regulators of safety equipment to ensure my safety. I could go buy a DOT helmet, and a DOT helmet, Department of Transportation, you can get certified with the DOT sticker on your helmet with minimal safety regulation. If I were to buy a motorcycle helmet, spend $450, I'd look for a Snell regulation or an EU regulation. The Department of Transportation does not care about you. Well, they do, but not in the regulation of their helmets. So you need to find products that have been vetted by outside sources, because Amazon is strictly a marketplace. Amazon could decide to vet their stuff better, but it's not. It's up to the consumer and the regulators of pencils.
It's basically a giant trading system where like everybody can put their own product on and like distribute it out towards others.
Yeah.
But, like, their main product is the distribution system in the website.
Yes. Well, their main product is knowing every little thing about everything in the entire world.
Use data and like the usage of complex surveillance and like cookies and get data gathering and stuff like that to like A, suggest things that you will buy, and B, then sell that user data to other companies so they can take advantage of you and sell more stuff to you.
Yeah. Oh, not only that, and then they're in charge of collecting user data for every other company. They like the AWS section is the one that kind of got me excited. Not excited. That was the most interesting section to me because when you're able to have that much information, you don't know what's valuable and invaluable. Like you don't know what's super valuable and what's not valuable at all. You can store all of it, and Amazon has the ability to collect and store every. Like I'm on Amazon's website right now. I can move this mouse around. I can go to my cart. I can put something in and remove it, and it stored that, tracked that, and it probably knows why I did that. But when you're able to store all this information and know everything about everybody, historically, capitalism has worked in not infinitely large amounts of stuff. If you wanted to grow wheat, you had to get land and you had to grow this wheat. There's a finite amount of land on the world. There's a finite amount of X, Y, and Z, whatever you're trying to do. But in the age of information, there's infinitely vast. I mean, theoretically, yes, there are finite amounts of information. But in practice, there's infinitely vast amounts of information that Amazon is collecting and sorting through. And the better that they can collect it and sort it, the more that they can sell it to other companies or purchase other companies so it's an uncompetitive market space or bully their sellers on their website to but one of the solutions I found, I guess, to creatively destruct a possible solution is I mean, this one's a little bad, but you could just attack them. You can destroy their information systems and their storage systems. And on it, like the future of warfare is going to be pretty cool. Well, not cool because it's warfare, but anyway, another solution I had was you could just give them so much bullshit information that their good information doesn't matter. So you just train an AI to move a mouse around, click a bunch of stuff on their websites, maybe even purchase a couple items, return a couple items.
Yeah, with like no rhyme or reason.
No rhyme or reason whatsoever. And just have 50,000 of them, 150,000 of them, 200,000 of them running at all times. And purchasing products that actual people need. So you could subcontract these products out to individual buyers, which Amazon probably wouldn't like. and they'd be collecting terrible information from you. And they couldn't anticipate the needs of everybody.
Mhm.
So that's a solution to the age of information. Or I guess the monopolistic tendencies of gathering the information, because there's not a chance I could gather as much information as them. Also, the book where I got the Amazon warehouse stuff called On the Clock by Emily Gundelsberger.
Mhm.
And when you look it up, or when you just look up On the Clock book on Google, the first response is an Amazon, and then it goes to Hatchet Book Group, which Hatchet Book Group is but
So let's discuss what kind of innovations could disrupt Amazon, similar to the way that Amazon disrupted old models of distribution. I think like super local manufacturing could eventually play a part into like something that could kind of ruin the Amazon's distribution center, like with 3D printing technology and like other stuff like that that's like currently being developed. Like there might be a time where like production facilities and like facilities where it's like literally just being built from the ground up are like in your like local area, so there would be no need for like a shipment like network across the nation. It would just be like your thing gets made at this specific location and you go pick it up, or it gets delivered to you by some other sort of distribution system
Yeah,
that could put them out.
with everything that's like advancing, I was
Mhm.
thinking like maybe like a same thing with that local managed stuff is like an AI managed micro fulfillment center where they have like drones deliver it in your
Yeah,
area.
no, that would be
That could be like a big possibility.
micro fulfillment center. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to argue that you can't. It's gotten to the point where you can't disrupt this practice. No creative disruption can happen, because if you do it to a well enough extent where they're worried about you, they'll just purchase you.
Yeah. So
So
they have kind of a monopoly over everything.
yeah, you could try. And oh man, I wish it was. My little brother's reading this book called Small is Beautiful, I think. I'm not sure what it's called.
Mhm.
And he's been telling me about this economist that thinks smaller economic zones are kind of the way to combat this. Kind of
That
what
makes sense.
you guys were saying. Shrink it instead of grow it.
Yeah, because big number is not always better number, which doesn't seem to be communicated by a lot of corporate entities.
No.
Let's discuss the ethical implications of the destructive side of Amazon.
Jobs being replaced by like AI in warehouses, job displacement. Just overall privacy concerns with data exploitations that they do with surveillance tools like the recognition. Yeah.
Job displacement, I think, is personally going to be a huge one. We've got Elon Musk like trying to build all these robots to take everybody's like physical labor jobs. If they get good enough to the point where they can actually like be viable in like a fulfillment center, then that's even more job loss. And then what do we even do with like the amount of unskilled laborers that would throw into the market?
You got to train them. You got to teach them a skill.
Yep, I guess.
Like, yeah, I mean, there are manufacturing techniques that are so advanced robots couldn't do them in the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
So if they still wanted to work in their manufacturing jobs and warehouse laboring, you just have to work in more advanced manufacturing techniques.
Yeah, I think that
those jobs are not as abundant. So you're going to displace a lot of people.
yeah.
But you would need to have a cultural shift to, I guess, more skilled labor and more educated populations. in order to actually re-job everybody who's lost. And Amazon does do that, sort of. I'm not sure to what extent. They brought it up a little bit in the documentary, but if you're working in an Amazon warehouse facility, they'll pay for your college education to some extent if you work X amount of hours or do this or do that, and then you give us 5 years of your life, or not 5 years, but I don't know. They would offer to pay for school in some instances, which is great. A lot of people don't have that opportunity.
What about the principle of corporate social responsibility from the books? Like, like corporations legally are considered personal entities. Like they can donate money to political groups. They can like take action in like certain senses. Like, what do we think about Amazon's corporate social responsibility? Like, do they really give a shit about the consumer or the like social outcomes of what is going on with their supply chain and what it does to like small business retailers and like other stuff like that? In my personal opinion, they do not do that at all. And they're actively like kind of, well, I guess it all comes back to the creative destruction. Like it's just displacement of like specific jobs and like labor and like specific areas of a market that used to be like in place. Like like when we used to ship everything intercontinentally by boat, the like sailors and like people who could operate boats and like take things like across the world in that way were like hyper valuable until we essentially learned that we could like fly things from one place to another, or we came up with more efficient ways to do it. So it all comes back to like just like it's kind of cyclical. Like everybody's displaced and then the new stuff comes around and fills its own niche. So
I'd Amazon's corporate social responsibility is it should take a leading step because they're one of the largest corporations. So they need to have a place in politics. Legislators write proper laws to protect the consumers. And if Amazon's truly consumer centric, they would have the consumer in mind, and they would, instead of having an empty chair in their boardroom meetings, they would have a chair filled with the consumer. They don't do that, which not necessarily good. But their hands in politics needs to be pretty significant. Same thing with any cutting edge technology or any cutting edge stuff. Any technological growth ever needs to have some regulatory body governing how they're going to operate. And it could be self-governed or it could be governed by society. Either way, there needs to be some level of regulation. But I don't know. When corporate entities are considered to be individuals, that is really bad.
I don't like that either.
Yeah, well, it prevents you from seeking, like, let's say, in the event you bought a hoverboard, it prevents you from seeking compensation when it burns. At the very minimum, you should be able to seek compensation. You can't do that. And they can fund political campaigns through they could just elect an official. It does not matter. Whoever has more money ends up winning a campaign. But
Essentially.
One thing I do want to talk about is about what happened in New York with Amazon and all of that, because I thought that was a super interesting point as well. And granted, a small part of it did revolve around them possibly wanting to start a union with them. And it was a flat out like, no, we don't want it. Like, and it kind of like goes back to that American Factories video, was that they also did not want a union. But But the fact that like after they had like this whole like press conference, this whole conversation after the deal was made and all of that, and then they just decided to pull out, which I thought was pretty shitty because they had the deal and everything was set to go.
Mhm.
And then they pulled out. And I just wanted to know everyone's thoughts on it.
Um, well, wasn't there like a ton of like political opposition, like from New York, like politicians and stuff like that?
I don't know if it was quite the politicians or if it was more like um
Just
just
like the
concerns.
unionization of the workers.
I think most of it was like concerns brought to the politicians, like and all the politicians were like the spokesperson. I think these concerns were brought to him by like citizens of New York.
Hmm.
Um, and they found a politician who agreed with them and was willing to like talk to Amazon about it.
Hmm.
Um, and the video made it seem like just it was just a little bit of pushback from New York about opening like their headquarters there.
Well, yeah, there some pushback from like the city and like those people because like there would be like drastic economic effects with like the already rising housing prices and like other economic stuff that's going on in the area. Like it just makes those kind of neighborhoods like unviable for other people to live in or other businesses to be set up in.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't.
Well, ooh,
Like, and I've never looked at living in New York, so I don't know what housing are right now. But I do know like New York City, all of that area, it's always been a high, like, in order to live in New York, it's always been a pretty high, like, market value when it comes to it. And, granted, Amazon would probably up it. I'd probably say up it at least a little bit.
when oh, oh, when a company is able to say, I'm going to build a new HQ, I'm going to build a new manufacturing facility, and have the cities of our country bid on who can give them the best deal, that's just
Yeah.
an
And that was
insane amount of power. And
another big part
they've
of
fallen
it.
short on their promises. Like they said they would house or work 50,000 people in the HQ2. They work 8,000 or 10,000 people. It's not
Yeah.
a very big facility. It's a smaller facility. And granted, they probably worked out a different deal with Arlington than they did with New York. But when you're advertising, oh, I'm going to employ 50,000 people in your city and do this and that, and then cities are like, I'll give you tax cuts. I'll give you X amount of land. I'll do this crime reduction plan. I'll do X, Y, and Z to get you to build in my city.
Mhm.
And then Amazon goes and builds in your city and they don't fulfill their promises. It's unethical.
Mhm.
It's just, I don't know, bad.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, so yeah, because I was gonna say, because weren't there some politicians who were like all for it, like because there are those people that are like, oh, like we want the big corporations in our town because they bring jobs and economic stability and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which Amazon like I can't blame the cities and I can't necessarily blame Amazon for this. That's just ineffective, improper regulation on capitalism, in my opinion. Sorry, that was a little opinionated, but
Well, it's not even capitalism anymore. It's just kind of a corporatocracy. Like
yeah.
it's corporate entities vying for power through lobbying and like getting specific needs done and met through the government
Well,
in
so
order to like, big number go up.
yeah, big number keep going. I read a paper called Techno-Feudalism or Platform Capitalism, Conceptualizing the Digital Society.
Mhm.
And I kind of want to read you guys a quote. So the quote is effectively, this is a different, it's not the author of this paper who It doesn't matter. Anyways, effectively, he argues governments have printed money that via various financial institutions have been invested in these corporations without significant risk or cost to any party involved, freeing these corporations from the normal demands for efficient profitability placed on capitalist firms. The second key observation is that these corporations derive their profitability from various forms of rent extraction. Cloud rent, in particular, derived from monopoly control of digital platforms rather from profit. So Amazon, if you look, was not originally profitable. It took years for Amazon to become profitable. If you look at the modern tech companies now, it takes years for them to become profitable. They're not here. They're disrupting economies through unnatural means. If you're getting $5 billion in funding to go start Uber, of course you're going to displace hundreds of thousands of taxi drivers. You can do whatever the fuck you want. There's no anything. Yeah. And like when you have, hold on. And then one more. And this is just a theory. This is not proven in any way, shape, or form. This is just a bunch of people bantering about what patterns they've seen. But not like, I guess continuing on, the novelty of vectorless mode of production for her lies in the production with feudalism. The novelty of vectorless mode production for her lies partly in the fact that the key resource enabling the new ruling class to rule, data information, is, unlike agricultural land or industrial resources, not naturally scarce by any measure. And they have such a head start on gathering data and information from everybody. All like the Roomba going around your house knows the floor plan of your house. It knows what size furniture you would need to buy. It knows.
They can see inside your house from your Wi-Fi router with like the reflective like electrical like signaling. Like there's so much information out there about everyone.
And whoever can organize and consolidate that information most concisely wins.
Palantir, that's why Palantir's scary as shit. Have you seen what they're doing recently? Like they're going to create a user database on every American citizen and like try to preemptively identify like crimes and stuff like that, which is very scary.
Yeah. That one's no fun.
I find that interesting that you had that article as one of your research articles, because one of mine was like about limitations on capitalism and like how like eventually regulatory forces need to be put in place in order to like stop like essentially corporations like Amazon from like essentially like just like strip mining their whole like economic section of the market. Like once entities like that are given too much power, I don't know, it just becomes like like a government sponsored monopoly where workers are exploited and prices are gouged, and like it eventually just becomes like less efficient and shittier over time. So we'll see what happens to Amazon.
Yeah, but I mean, if the FTC is the Federal Trade Commission are the ones, I guess, surveilling companies to make sure they're not monopolistic.
Regulate, supposedly.
Yeah, they're supposed to regulate them. Amazon is vertically integrated, the whole chain, the whole thing, and they're growing horizontally. And they started with, they've kind of done vertical and horizontal growth in tandem. And I think the FTC, this is coming from what I've heard, but like Kroger, or the FTC stopped Kroger from buying Albertsons or something. They stopped like a grocery chain buying another grocery chain, which probably good because then that grocery chain would own XYZ. So I trust them in that sense, but they haven't regulated the internet market whatsoever. They have done jack shit, which internet market is not real life, but it is because it affects the consumers. It's, I don't know. There's a clear difference between the regulation of brick and mortar stores and internet stores and internet companies, and the FTC is lacking significantly. They need to pick up the pace. They need to increase whatever they're doing, and they're not.
Well, do they even have like the logistics to like even monitor that kind of like activity, I guess?
Amazon
Like,
does.
does the FTC have the manpower for somebody to be like keeping an eye on all these entities like that are appearing online and over time and stuff like that?
Not when federal budgets are getting slashed. Like, that's just, I don't know. The regulatory bodies, they're so important.
Yeah.
Like one of the first things, so this is going to get kind of political, and but one of the first things Donald Trump did when he was in office is slash the auditors for the government. The auditors saved the American taxpayers like $7 billion a year. And they would go through, and the job could have been done better. And I will say that, like, every job can be done better. Everything can be more efficient. Everything can be done more efficiently. But if your goal is to make American tax dollars spent more efficiently, keep the auditors and just add more auditors. Don't fire the old ones and hire a new staff. Like, and you're not even hiring a new staff. You're just getting a committee that will last X amount of days through executive orders to do these things. You need more rock solid planning. And I haven't seen that within any regulatory bodies within the government. But there are definitely regulatory bodies. There has to be I have to have faith that there's regulatory bodies within a free market that can regulate each other. But I'm not sure if that's the case.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just it's just such a tough situation to be in. Because like they just have too much power currently. Like there's no way that lobbying should be legal and that they should be viewed as their own entities in the eyes of the government and the law.
No.
Like, I don't know.
That's crazy.
But yeah, that's about all I have to say for all the questions in here. Anybody else have anything to get out there?
I mean, I'm going to just answer a couple of last questions. So it says, discuss different strategies that non-Amazon businesses, both small, local, and big business firms such as Walmart, have used to stay competitive in the new landscape that Amazon has created. A lot of people do like price matching. If that price is listed on Amazon, we will match the price. Like Walmart has their own online retailers. They will have, at least during COVID, I guess, they've implemented car delivery systems so you can purchase your groceries online, go pick them up at Walmart, have somebody deliver them to your car for free. So people have been able to compete with Amazon in some sections, but this is going to get anecdotal again. But in my experience as a salesman, when I am trying to sell a product to someone, my biggest pet peeve is when they're online shopping in front of my face. I really hate that because I don't get paid if you don't buy a shoe, which is fine. Like if you don't want the shoe, you don't need the shoe, don't buy the shoe. But
well, I think like small businesses is if they can like differentiate themselves from Amazon. Like small businesses, like if you see like Etsy became really big because they can do things that like Amazon can't do, like the personalized custom items that they can sell. Like you can't find those things on Amazon, so the consumer would turn to a place like Etsy to get something custom, because Amazon's like an everything store. But if it's like you want something outside of just like the everything, then you'd go to a smaller business for that.
Yeah.
Which in
Would we call Etsy a small business though?
Or well, not okay. I said Etsy, but I meant like the small businesses that run through Etsy. Okay. I meant like
well, and that's the thing is Etsy's a lot like Amazon, but Etsy doesn't focus on the low prices.
Okay, well,
Granted,
I just meant someone who makes custom orders. Someone who makes orders can do that. Okay. I don't know what Etsy is.
Yeah, kind of going off that, like the local businesses, like say a local bouquet shop, like a flower shop. Like they have something that Amazon doesn't have is like local connections. They could host like events and stuff in their towns. Amazon can't get that personal connection with their customers really. So that's kind of a difference. Something that they can do and Amazon can't really do.
Yeah, but like how much can that be exploited?
Yeah, it can't really expand too much on that.
Well,
You can't get that big off of just localizing it.
I mean, localizing business will work if every business was localized.
Mhm.
But there are international businesses that are doing tons of things all over the world. And localized business, if you were an entrepreneur wanting to start a business, you start small and grow. For some people, it's growth to the moon until the number get bigger. For other people, it's I want to create a brick and mortar shop and stay and service my community. And if everybody had the service my community mindset, we wouldn't have this problem. But
Yeah.
when people get greedy and grow number,
Yeah.
which is the natural state of capitalism,
Mhm.
but it's been somewhat successful so far. So I don't know. But I like the idea of localizing businesses and then, I don't know, using other online retailers. But the problem is Amazon owns so much of the internet space. Like one of the opening excerpts was like, "Oh, how much of the internet does Amazon own?" And he goes, "A lot."
Yeah.
You can't just own a lot of the internet. Like it's absurd. The
Yeah.
internet, it's like owning the world.
It's an intangible asset. It's an intangible asset that's like a wild influence and power. But
And if this is taking it back to a documentary a little bit ago. But if you wanted to create a successful company, you create culture. Amazon hasn't created culture. They've given you spheres to be cultural. They've created the social spheres on the internet for people to communicate with each other. Well, not necessarily Amazon, but like Facebook and Meta, Twitter, Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. But when you're able to monitor everybody's speech, you can get a lot of information, and that information is not distributed equally among entrepreneurs. So creative destruction cannot happen in the online sphere. Physically, it can happen, but I don't know.
all right. Well, I've said everything I have to say, and I'm actually going to be late for work. But it was a fantastic conversation, guys.